This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Darius Davis, the defensive line coach at Robert Morris. Coach Davis reflects on his journey, development as a coach, and stepping into his current role at RMU. If you like this podcast, make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch new episodes each week. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Davis.
Coach Davis, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Doing great, man. There's a little bit rain going on here in Pittsburgh, but we had like 2 weeks of sunshine, so it's kind of getting back at us.
Yeah, that's right, man. Well, hopefully spring ball and spring recruiting, and I guess it's camp season now for everybody across the country. Hopefully everything is going well y'all's way, and I appreciate you taking just a little bit of time to visit with us here on Inside the Headset, man.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I appreciate you having me, man. It's something that I've seen a couple of my buddies do, and I was like, man, that looks awesome. I want to sit down and chop it up with you a little bit. You do a great job, and the AFCA does a great job. So it was something I wanted to have the opportunity to just share my story a little bit and be able to have people get to know me a little bit.
Yeah, well, let's dive in. Let's get to know you, man. One question I've been leaning on here as of recent is just jumping the podcast off with, when did you know, especially as you look back on yourself, when did you know that you want to be a ball coach, that you want to make a profession out of this? Man,
it was actually real young for me. I was one of them kids where my dad just sat me in front of the TV and I had to watch what he watched. It wasn't like now I have a daughter, she's 8 years old. What do you want to watch? And we watch Disney and all that other stuff. It wasn't like that back in the day. So it was pretty much my dad put me in front of the TV screen. I watch ESPN all day, every day. I've seen every probably ESPN Sports Center episode, all that stuff, every football game we watched. So that channel never moved. If it wasn't that, it was Seinfeld. It was either one of the two. So back in the day. So I kind of aged myself there. But yeah, that's how I kind of knew early on, just being my dad played ball. He played college ball and stuff. My brothers did too. So I was always around the game. And so I always knew early, I watched a lot of the coaches. I knew I wanted to be a coach early on. I'll probably say around 10 or 11, I knew I was like, man, I want to coach someday. I always knew that. I kind of knew. I didn't know how to get to it, but I knew I always wanted to coach from a young age.
Good, man. Well, you kind of had a unique opportunity, as we were kind of talking before the podcast. You know, most people, I don't know, it's not fair to say most, but a lot of people kind of grow up and they stay in the neighborhood their whole life, and then they play in the local middle school and they play at the local high school, and they don't have that much transition. But you played both in high school ball, both in California and in Arizona. Is that correct? Talk a little bit about that experience of, having two different high school head coaches, two different experiences, two different defenses, all that kind of stuff, and maybe how that shaped a little bit of who you are as a person and a coach.
Yeah, it was, for me, at a young age, I moved around a lot, just because my dad was in the military, he's in the Navy, so I moved around a little bit. So I was actually born in Oklahoma, but then I ended up moving at a young age to California in the Bay Area. So that's kind of where my mainly roots are. And then I moved to Arizona, like you said, in high school. And the different styles and everything like that is so different. Like, you wouldn't think just by being one state over from Arizona to California, the styles are definitely different, and kind of the style of football they played. And then just the competition. I think that was the biggest thing, eye-opening thing to me. And in California, the Bay Area, there's a lot of talent.
Absolutely.
And so there's also a lot of talent in Arizona. So I was shocked by how good the actual talent was in Arizona, being that it doesn't get the kind of, highlights it gets as California does. But there's a lot of talent there. And so I was shocked by that a little bit, because I thought I was going to go to Arizona and just not make it's going to be easy.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm like, it's about to be easy. So, but it was definitely, the schemes and stuff are a little bit different. As far as California was more spread, open, they'd get the ball out. It was more wide. So playing with that, I played quarterback actually in high school. I didn't come a D lineman until I actually got into college. My last year I played a little bit of it, but I really didn't get into D-line play until college. I was actually recruited as a tight end, and then I switched to D-line. So for me, just knowing the offenses and doing the offenses, going to an offense where I'm a quarterback and we're running, spread, and then going to an offense where we're running power football. Yeah. I'm handing the ball off to play action, deep balls, stuff like that. So from that standpoint, it was a lot different.
That's awesome, man. Well, you go have this high school career, finish up in Arizona, then you go to Scottsdale Community College and you start your collegiate career there. And I just kind of talk a little bit more about it. You end up at Wayne State, and you to finish your career. It's a long story we're going to hop into about how you ultimately finish your career at Wayne State, but you go finish some more of your eligibility at Wayne State with the emergence of the transfer portal. And I know the JC thing going to from a 2-year to a 4 year is not necessarily a transfer, but I'm a transfer myself. I'm always passionate about the conversation, the opportunity to see 2 different universities, all that kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on your experience, how it ties in with the transfer portal, you sitting in a FCS program that I'm sure, to some capacity probably looks in that portal. Just talk to me a little bit about what you think about everything circling that topic.
Okay. Yeah, for me, my story is like you said, a little bit different than just straight transfer portal because it is, you're expected to transfer after 2 years being in a junior college. So for me, I was a knucklehead in high school, so I was always smart to do the work, but I was just lazy to do the work. And so for me, I had no choice but to go to junior college. I had a lot of schools that was after me in high school. And I just decided, I said, hey, it's best for me to probably go JUCO because I'm not where I need to be at as far as school-wise. So I wanted to have a better chance to open that up. So I ended up going to Scottsdale and choosing them. They were the ones that kind of impressed me the most. And we were very loaded at that time. I think we ended up with like 8 to 9 people in the NFL in that squad. It was ridiculous. But it gave me a chance to, really be able to learn how to be independent because it's tough. Being in a junior college is different than just transferring from a 4-year to 4-year.
Absolutely.
I don't know if people know, but it's definitely a grind. And so, at one point I was working 3 jobs at one time. I was working at the school. I was working at Toys R Us, believe it or not, and I was working. They don't even have those no more. And then I was working at the grocery store overnight. So I was working 3 jobs and then going to practice. So. It was definitely taught me how to hard work and taught me all the things I needed to be. I feel like I was missing that I needed, and so from that transition, coming out from JUCO to a 4-year school, I was mainly looking for somebody that I ain't got to pay nothing. That was my main focus. I don't want to work 3 jobs. I see everybody else out here not having to work 3 jobs. I don't want to work 3 jobs. So I was just thankful for any opportunity I had. And so I actually made a tough decision coming out from JUCO to 4 years. So I wasn't even actually going to go to Wayne State at first. I had 3 schools that were looking at me Division II wise, and then I had probably about 5 Division I's. Well, the caveat was either I leave mid-year and go Division II. Because at the time, the rules were a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So at the time, I had to graduate to be able to go to Division I because I wasn't qualified coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And so once that happened, I knew I had a choice to make. Do I bank on myself and try to go D1 and just graduate and all these D1s is recruiting me right now, stay with me? I'm not stupid enough to believe. Like, luckily, I knew a little bit more than some of the other players.
Yeah.
And so they could be recruit me, and then they're like, oh, we don't need you no more by the time I graduate. I don't want that to happen. My mom kind of put me onto that. And so I went to a recruitment trip to Concordia St. Paul, me and my teammate, Benny. And we were both, before that I never met him. He went to a Phoenix college that was not too far, and we played against each other. That's how I knew who he was. And we were going to commit there. And I wouldn't even go take a trip to Wayne State. That's the crazy part. And my mom, the only reason why it happened is crazy. My mom said, no, you need to see every opportunity. You told them you were going to go, so you got to be a man of your word, and you're going to go at least check out to see what they talking about. I'm like, Mom, it's in Nebraska. There's no way, And so, and I actually when I ended up going out there, I actually ended up having a good time. And I just felt like everything was more genuine, and everything I just felt like more comfortable. I think I was worried about the first one just because of the money, you know what I mean? And I was afraid to make that quick decision. The second, with Nebraska, they had the money, but they also, I felt at home. It just felt better. Everything just felt right. And so when I made that transition, that was the biggest thing that was going to my decision. Is it wasn't the hardest if I was going to go, Division II versus Division I. It was how can I get out of a situation where I don't want to be in JUCO for another semester working 3 jobs. I wanted to get out whatever I can and play. I didn't care where I played. I think now that's a good thing that you asked is like the transfer portal is different. I think guys are searching for validity in D1, and I wasn't searching for that. I wanted to play D1. I wanted too bad because I wanted to be part of the best of the best. But at the same time, back in my mind, I'm like, okay, I can have less debt. I don't have to be working 3 jobs. I can just get out now and just play a good brand of football. And anybody knows Northern Sun is a good brand of football. It was tough football out there. So for me, that was kind of where I kind of made my decision. I don't have an issue with guys transferring. What I would say to guys that do transfer, I would say I'm more on the side of don't wait after 1 year and just say, I'm just transfers because you don't like where you're on the depth chart or something like that, or you feel something, you think the coach don't like you or is ill will. I think communication is key when some of these transfers and understanding what they need to do and understand where you at. Like, you got to understand who you are as a player.
Yeah. Like,
if I'm a player and I'm an all-conference player and I just got off an all-conference year and you feel like you this, that dude, I can understand that. But if you're a third-string guy and you thinking you that dude, you're probably not going to get as much as you want out of that transfer portal. And I think that's a tricky part. And I think some kids are misguided in thinking, oh, my boy, he was just okay. I'm better than him. And he got in the transfer portal. And he's going to Oregon and all that. And they're looking at, they're judging themselves with other people versus being realistic with themselves and having that conversation with myself. Where am I at and where I need to grow? So I'll just say, at least be patient with the process of where you at, because once you make that choice is done. Yeah. And so from that standpoint, just knowing you have the right people around you. I think some people have kids have the wrong people around them, and understand, okay, the situation I'm in now, these guys, because you know as I know, we work hard to recruit these players.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of time and money spent on these players. So at least try to check every box before you do enter that portal. But now, if you a dude and you a guy, I tell guys all the time, I'll help you. If you've been here a couple of years and you balled out for me, hey, I'm not mad at you. If you feel like you should be at that next level, hey, I'll help you find a spot. It's not that big of a deal to me. But I just think the guys that rush in a little bit quicker, start to see a lot more freshmen and sophomores hop in. Yeah. I kind of hesitate versus that, because definitely now with your credits and stuff, it makes a big deal, as you know. So that would be my gist. So I'm not against the transfer portal or anything. I just want guys to be a little bit smarter about it and understand what they're getting themselves into.
Right, absolutely, man. Kind of as you mentioned, there's not many parallels between being in a 2-year institution. You got 2 years to be there before you got to get out. All right, so that comparing to the transfer portal is not the same thing, but I'm so happy that you took the time to explain that, because when it came down to it, I've actually recruited kids in the same exact situation as what you were in. It was like, all right, man, yeah, we'll save your spot till May. We're going to have a signing day. You're going to have to trust that we're going to save your spot, and that trust isn't always there. And and you have to protect yourself, and you have to make the best decision for yourself. So I'm happy you kind of explain your situation, because that is something I feel like isn't always thought about. Now, you go to Wayne State, have a tremendous career, get the opportunity to play at the next level. League folds underneath you with for opportunity to maybe get with the Dallas Cowboys, and you go and do some indoor football. Got to work some jobs in between the seasons and things like that. You spent some time at AT&T and kind of realized, this isn't it. So kind of as you wrapped up your arena career, you start realizing that you want to transition into that professional role. Just tell me about that first phone call back to Wayne State. You didn't have your degree. Just talk about that process and how you got back, or how you initially got on the football field.
Yeah, so I was telling you, we had the conversation before, is just that I was in LA living, the LA life. That's the best thing about it. You in LA, you ain't mad. You know what I mean? You got everything you want around you. So I loved LA. But the simple fact is I didn't feel fulfilled. I was coming home from work. I was in sales at AT&T, and I was running these stores, and I just didn't feel fulfilled. I just didn't feel that, this is what I'm meant to do. I was good at it, but it was just not my passion. Yeah. And so I talked to my brother about it. He lived with me. We lived together in LA. That's kind of how it happened. He was out there doing his acting career, which is kind of cool, meeting some of the people he was associated with. And then basically I called my old head coach up, Coach McLaughlin, man, and he's just been a blessing for me. I said, hey, Coach, what do you think about me coaching back at Wayne State? I said, I know I got to finish my degree. I just want to come and coach. Anything I can do, I'll do. Without hesitation, he was like, hey, whenever you're ready to go, let's go. Like, it was no hesitation. He didn't say, oh, let me think about it. It was crazy how much faith he had in me. So he must have saw something in me as a player, but he did not hesitate. He's like, I'd love to have you. Let me know when you get in. That's basically kind of what he said. And that was a crazy experience for me because that's the first time in my life I really felt that people have told me this, but that moment really felt it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And it ain't even about that. It's about who knows you. That's the one thing that I've always got out of coaching. It ain't about who you know. It's about who knows you.
Right.
He knew who I was. He was confident, and he knew how hard I worked as a player. And we always just see eye to eye as a player, but he knew I worked my butt off. And so for him to be able to give me that opportunity was huge. And that was the first time in my life where I really felt that, okay, yeah, he like somebody that we built a relationship still had my back, and he understood kind of what I wanted, and he didn't hesitate. Like a lot of people, sometimes they hesitate.
Yeah.
There was no hesitation. So that was a cool experience for me to see a different side of him as a head coach. Because as a player, you don't always see the sides of coach. Like a player, if you coaching me, I don't always see, like, you preach a lot of stuff, but I don't know if you really live it. He really lived that in that moment. So that's what I was impressed with.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely a testament to the impression that you left on your, coach as a player. I know sometimes, and I found myself like this as I was trying to get in the collegiate ranks. I was going through, I was emailing all the coaches that I played for, and I was like, I remember I kind of talked back to this coach at one time. He might not me. And I run into those guys, and man, they didn't care. They saw the big picture of everything.
As long as you make plays.
Yeah.
As long as you make plays.
Yeah, and even my character majority of the time, and things like that. And so those guys are watching, and they can appreciate what you do, and that's something I've always loved about the profession. Now, why was it important for you to go and get that degree, finish up, and then talk about that experience? Because everybody those first couple of years for pretty much all coaches at some point in time it's either rough financially, it's rough from experience, the hours, whatever. It sounded like you had a combination of everything.
Oh yeah, so I had a lot going on, man. This is. I didn't tell you this before, but it was a whirlwind for me. So when I got there, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, you know what I mean? I know they talk about long hours, stuff like that, but I'd never really seen it. When they talk about long hours. I'm not an early morning person. Everybody who knows me knows that I'm not an early morning person. So having to get up and be there at work at 7 a.m. in the morning, it was tough for me. On top of that, it was important for me to finish my degree because I knew I wanted to coach college football. And you can't coach college football without a degree. And I knew that. So that was my motivation. You know what I mean? I was never a big school person. Like, I enjoyed it. I was smart. I learned a lot. But I just didn't – I can pass the classes. If I just put a little minimum effort, I can still pass the classes. You know what I mean? But when I was going back this time, I was focused. I'm like, I ain't getting nothing under 3.5. I was driven. I was new. I wasn't going to leave the chance that this class may be the reason why I can't graduate. And so that was my whole goal. I knew I wanted to coach college football, and I knew that was my driver. And so, and plus my mom, she was a big help in this. Anything I needed, she made sure she took care of it. She believed in me, and she was like, okay, we go do this. Anything you need, just let me know, and we'll figure it out. And so she was a big driver of that. But being that experience, it was eye-opening. I was doing 18 credit hours. I was also working full-time, basically a full-time coach. He didn't give me the assistant D-line coach. He didn't give me a GA spot. He gave me I had the whole D-line by myself. Hey, figure it out, And so he was there anytime I needed help, or any of the coaches, they were awesome in helping me in that mode. The head coach there now, Wayne State, Logan, he was real. It was very important for me to have him there because anytime I had questions or anything like that, he was awesome helping me out with that, and I owe him a lot for that. But the experience was basically 7 a.m. I'm getting up. I'm going in the office. I've been there. It's crazy because everybody else had cubicles. Well, I'm not a coach technically. I'm a student coach.
Yeah. And
so I had to partner up with another desk with somebody. So I'm in there scrunched up. You know what I mean? And whatever needed to be done, I try to get it done the best I could. I was in and out the office all the time because I had classes and stuff. So trying to catch up in between classes and all that and be prepared for practice, it was tough.
Right.
It was very, very tough, but it was something that I don't regret doing because now I'm where I'm at now, all that hard work, it paid off in the end, and the grind and the part that people don't tell you about when you get into football, it's not the football stuff that really kills you and drains you. It's the recruiting is probably the most draining part. For me, that was hard. 18 credit hours, and then you have to be focused on a student athlete 24/7 when they're on your campus and trying to get them to come to your institution. that was hard. That was the hardest part for me at first adjustment is making sure I got to go to class. Well, then I got to meet him to go do this, and I got to. So I was trying to juggle everything and recruiting D linemen. It was tough, but we figured it out and we got some good players. But it was definitely not an easy task. And kind of the part that helped me out is that the head coach let me recruit Arizona. And so when I used to go back home, like for the summers and stuff like that, or a break or spring break, I would just go back home and I would just recruit in that area. So he made it easier on me. He didn't give me a Nebraska recruiting where I had to be there all the time. He made it easier on me and made it seamless for me to be able to do that. But it was definitely a grind, like you said. That first job, it was the hardest thing I've ever did. It was no joke. And then going into my second year was even crazier because then I had a daughter on the way. So she ended up being born while I was making zero money. So like I said, my mom was a big help in that. And so that was, I think, the hardest struggle once that second year happened. That was tough. And like I told you earlier, I was playing in the offseason, I was playing arena football. So I was doing triple-double duty. I was going to school, football, practice. Then I was playing arena football at that on the weekends. And the coach, like I said, the head coach was so understanding and great about it, Coach Mack, because he made it to where I can go to practice there. I can be able to play those games on Saturday. He made it the schedule where I can do that. Because he could have easily maybe not, like, no, we need you here. He could have easily done that. And he didn't do that, man. He's like, yeah, go ahead. You got to do what you got to do. I know that's your money maker. Go do what you got to do. So he allowed me to play arena football, take all these classes, and be able to coach full time. Like that was the best thing ever, man. So that's why it was easy for me to work hard because I knew what he was investing in me. Yeah. So if you're the type of guy that's investing in me like that, I'm gonna give it to you tenfold. I'm gonna work my butt off to make sure that we get as successful as possible. But he helped me, tremendously in that time, and I can never repay him back for what he helped for me and my family. Absolutely. Coach Mack was a big deal with that.
Yeah, man. Well, that's good. That he's so special for you in your life and your family. Now he handed you the keys to the defensive line, and we all, anybody listening to the podcast, we all remember last time we ever got to lace him up. And we were starting to make that transition to football. We thought we knew everything about the game. I thought I knew everything about it, and you realize you don't know anything. You don't know anything, man. Even about your own position, your own defense, your own offense, whatever, right? And so as you got handed those keys and you found yourself trying to find individual drills, trying to find a way to reach this kid versus that kid, the very talented kid, uplifting the last guy on your depth chart. What were some of your resources and some of the things you did to develop as a coach in this really time crunch? Because like you said, you're taking 18 hours, you're working, you're doing this, you're doing that. But when it's all said and done, you still got to put a great product out there on the field with those 3 or 4 defensive linemen that you're sitting out there. How did you make sure you were doing that job?
So for me, that was the toughest part. I tell people all the time, my first 2 years, I was the worst D-line coach in America. Once I realized what I was doing wrong, it was a learning process. I'll ask different coaches on staff. I would try. I didn't know a lot of coaches in the game at that time. As you know, when you get into the game, you know who you play for, but you don't really know anybody outside of that. Absolutely. And so that's where it was hard for me because I'm trying to reach out to people. And back then, you didn't have Twitter wasn't like it is now, and not like all the social media wasn't like it was now. It was a little bit tougher to reach out to some of those guys. Now you can just go to Twitter. Somebody can reach me or you. It's easy. If I want to pick your brain, I'm like, hey, coach, what do you think about this? You can hit me up right back. So it was very, very tough to try to figure out those drills. I basically went on YouTube and just started looking at stuff. Now YouTube was my best friend. And I tell people this. I tell my players this all the time. I was like, I was the worst D-line coach my first years because I was doing stuff that didn't pertain to the actual game. I was just doing drills to do drills. You know what I mean? I was thinking it because it was cool because the NFL guy was doing it. I thought it was cool. Well, I don't know too many NFL dudes going to Wayne State. As far as D-line, we're just going to get them there. Going to be like that. We had one guy, but all of them are not like that. They all can't do what Aaron Donald and some of those other guys, Julius Peppers, can do, right? And so that was the hard part for me is that I was just doing drills that looked cool to me because I was young and naive. Yeah. And then once I went to the AFCA and I listened to a coach talk, and he said, "If your drills don't correlate to the field, then why are you doing it?" And that hit me. Yeah. Because after that, I looked at every drill I ever did. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Yeah. And so that's when I really got into it. My second year, I felt like I was a lot better than my first year. My third year, when I ended up going to Worcester, I thought I was a lot better when it came to that stuff because I was that stuck. I don't know why that stuck to me so much. There were a lot of things that a lot of great coaches said, but that one really stuck to me. And it made sense to me more than others. I see a lot of guys do that now, and that's what I always tell them. I was like, man, if I have one advice for you, whatever you do in the drills that you're doing, just make sure that you can explain it and relay it right to, like, you put them in those situations in practice. So when it goes to the field, it's like, oh, I remember this coach is talking about this and that and the other. So you're right, man. It's definitely a struggle the first time. You think you got everything figured out. You like, I'm the hot stuff. I'm coaching D-line college football. And then you get in there, you're like, why is my D-lineman sucking this game?
Yeah.
He's like, why are we getting our butt kicked this game? Why the ball get red on us this game? Why? Head coach come to you like, hey, we ain't got no sacks in this game. What's going on? Now you sit there like, okay, hold up. All right. That's when you start getting nervous. Like, okay, hold up. I ain't doing something ain't done right.
That's right.
So that's all I need. That's all the validation I need. When I see them stats at the end of the game, I'm like, hey, we ain't making enough impact. Something's wrong.
That's right.
And it ain't their fault. It's my fault. That's the hardest thing I had to realize as a player. As a player, for you, and I ask you this, like, when you can do something so easy, how do you teach the other guys to be able to do it? Because for you, you just naturally athletic. You can naturally do it.
Absolutely.
As a coach. And so now you're teaching them. It's like, oh, well, it might be simple to you, but it's not simple to them.
Yeah.
So for me, how did you go about that when you came down to that and teaching and when you got to the profession?
You know what? That's great that you said that. And I'm gonna tell a quick story and I'll answer your question. When I first got into the industry, like when I first got into the coaching profession, I played at Baylor, and there was a running backs coach that came, and he was a big time NFL guy. Played running back in the NFL, and I was hearing some dialogue from some coaches, and they would always joke and say, "Man, he'd come in there and just say, 'Hey man, make a miss.'" It's like, Coach, like you played 10 years in the league. These dudes are not that. You got to teach. You got to block them. It was very much like, I've had so much talent. I know what I got, what I had to do. So I'm just going to tell you what you got to do, not necessarily how to do it. And so that was something that resonated on with me earlier. So I knew I would never allow for that to happen whenever I would coach. But really the best thing that ever happened to me is I played running back, I played cornerback in Army, but I coached receivers. That was my first job. So nothing that I ever coached was something I had done before. So I couldn't go back into, oh, hey man, this is how you get off press release, man. I had to go sit in those clinics. I had to go educate myself. So I luckily enough, I was always in a situation where everything I taught was something I had to go learn myself. And so I was able to kind of go through that process with guys. But I'm happy you hit that because I put this out on social media once I got out of coaching, but whenever I would go on interviews, I kind of had a little pack, a little deck, a little PowerPoint, whatever, and I had a drill philosophy. Now this was something that was in my receiver manual, it was in my special teams manual, and it was 5 things in there. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I put it on social media when, like I said, went viral because it said something along the lines. It was like, what you do, if it doesn't correlate with your offense or defense, you shouldn't be doing it. If it should also correlate to the amount of time that you're doing it. I thought back to my first year coaching receivers. This is when I put this together from year 1 to year 2. We could catch the ball one-handed behind our back, over our shoulder, and all of a sudden we get in a game and we'll throw the ball 6 times. I'm like, when are we working on blocking? We can catch it every kind of way, but when are we working on blocking and a run-heavy offense? And so, man, it's as a young guy, it's crazy all the growth that you make in those first couple of years when you really sit back and say, what's important? These drills are cool, but what's important? So I'm happy you dove into that, man. I'm actually really passionate about some of those things as a young coach, that development that you have to go through naturally. And hopefully some of these conversations that me and you are having right now can help some of the young guys say, sheesh, what am I doing? So
exactly. Like, let's go review my drill tape to see if it's effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, I never thought about that. Like, you are in an Army offense. Why are we working on catching? We might get one ball. Yeah, we didn't work on catching, but we didn't have a ton of blocking drills up here. That's what we're gonna be doing.
Absolutely, yeah. Like it's got to correlate to the percentage, of how many times we're gonna catch a ball. But now let's talk about something that's even harder. Getting that you kind of got your first gig, and that was kind of a unique situation because you're still finishing your undergrad. Your coach was fortunate enough to give you the keys to the defensive line. But now when you step away and you're starting to reach out to people that you don't necessarily know, You ended up at Worcester as assistant coach, defensive line.
Yeah.
Had a couple of little jobs there. How did you get that gig? What was the process like to get connected with that opportunity?
Okay, so the process on that was, so I was supposed to do an internship in the UK for this football league. They were basically trying to install football, high school football like we have it here over there in the UK. And so I was fortunate enough, one of the alumni and a great friend of mine, Byron Chamberlain, he hooked me up with this guy through his company and tried to get me that. Byron has been a big help for me in my career. But he was helping me get that. And so I was in the process of doing all that. Like I told you, I had a daughter. So through all that, some of the stuff, it was kind of get harder and harder to do it. And then I was like, man, just forget this. I was like, I appreciate the opportunity and trying to figure all this out. I said, but I got to go do internship in Arizona where my daughter lived. That's where my daughter was living at the time. So, she was very young and that was important to me. And so I took an internship at a Boys and Girls Club in Arizona, just for that reason, because of my daughter. And through that process, because I had to do an internship for one semester so I can get my degree.
Yeah.
And so during that process, I'm just reaching out to schools, reaching out to schools. And in the summer, I honestly didn't think anything was going to happen. And it wasn't until probably, I'd say, the end of June, beginning of July. I'm talking about like Lake Erie College. I'm talking about Albany. It's crazy. I actually applied for Robert Morris, all these schools to just have stuff on football schools. That's all. Send my resume. And then Coach Colapri, he called me back and he just started. Didn't know him from Adam. Didn't know anybody that knew him at all. And he called me. We have a conversation, and we're well. I just loved everything about his energy and everything. So he interviewed me over the phone. I remember it was crazy. I would work at I had two jobs at the time. I had my internship that I was doing at the Boys and Girls Club. I worked overnight at the resort in Chandler, Arizona, and then I would drive around this company called Vail. So you know how Uber and everything works, right? And so Vail is basically the same thing, but for only medical. So I would take people to their appointments, and then if they wanted to ping me, I could take them back, and that's how I got paid by doing that. Probably one of the smartest things. I had a big Tahoe, so the gas was killing me at that time. But so I was doing that. So it was crazy. When he called me, I actually pulled over in a parking lot there in between one of my runs, and I had a whole conversation in a parking lot. I still remember like it was yesterday. I had it in a parking lot, and he hired me right then and there, man. I was excited. I didn't even want to continue working, but I knew I needed that money, so I had to continue to work to make my route. But he hired me on the spot, and he's like, "Hey, I love everything about you." La da da da. He checked my references, which was Coach Mack. That's really all I had. And he spoke highly of me, which I appreciate. And man, Coach Colapri has been, man, that guy's been so important for me because, like you said, it's your first job. You don't know what to expect. And I heard some horror stories about first jobs. So absolutely. I was very, very, like, I didn't know what to expect. Before it's been my whole catch. Hey, coach, I knew everybody on staff because he hired other ex-players. So I knew a lot of those guys already. But when I got in this position, I was like, man, this is about to be totally brand new. But he makes it seamless, man. He great dude, man. He makes sure you have time with your family. Anytime I needed to go back home and see my daughter, he makes sure that happened. Like it was all love, man. I told him, I said, when I left, it was very, very hard. It was very, very hard. He couldn't afford me at that point because I was only getting paid $10,000. That's all I was getting paid. Yeah. I wasn't getting paid much, so I couldn't make a living and take care of my daughter off $10,000. But he tried to do everything to keep me, and I wanted to stay there just because when you have good leadership like that, hard to find. You don't want to let it go because you know the other side of it, and as you know, you just good and bad and everything. And so, but yeah, he was a great influence. He taught me a lot. Taught me how to treat people when they're going on like visits and stuff and like that. So he's very good people and very good connect for me. And I still talk to him this day. He hardly goes to the AFCA. He went this year, and so I got time to chop it up with him a little bit. But if I drive by Worcester, I make sure I stop to see him in the office and everything like that because he gave me my first opportunity of getting paid. So I owe a lot to him.
Yeah. Well, that's good, man. So you had a very short stint there. Like you said, wasn't making much and, pursuing the opportunity to expand that network and expand that
Yeah.
financial situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up at Findlay
Yeah.
as a co-defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
2 years out of really technically 1 year's out from from your bachelor's degree, but a few
Mm-hmm.
years out of experience. So I mean, yes,
Yeah.
it's an important role. You don't have now you play football your whole life, so you got tons of that kind of experience. But when it comes to just X's and O's and sitting in staff meetings
Mm-hmm.
and game planning, don't have that much experience. Just talk to us a little bit about that acclimation period to having such an important role, and how you prepare for it.
Yeah. So I kind of learned at Wooster we had a lot. When as the lower level you have, the more work you got to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I learned some of that stuff. Is at that bar ground there at Wooster, is just learning O-line play and stuff like that and how they're doing stuff like that. When I got to Findlay is even a crazier story. I was back in Arizona again in the summer. I'm getting ready to go back to Wooster actually, and this guy named Jason McCrenos hits me up on Twitter, and I'm like, God, this guy looks familiar. And he's like, hey, he just said, hey, would you be interested in a D-line job? I'm like, I guess, like, I don't know, like, I don't know who this dude is. Like, I'm trying to figure out who he is. I'm like, I've never met this guy before, but he looks so familiar.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, well, we have an opening. I would love to give you an interview. And I'm like, where's even Findlay? I had no idea because I'm from the West Coast, so Wooster was just new to me as it was.
Yeah.
I knew where Cleveland was. And so this on the other side of Ohio, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't even know where Findlay is. Like, how far is it? All this other stuff. And so he's like, just come in for an interview. We chopped it up back and forth, and I didn't know not one. The first thing I do is I look up Findlay. I'm like, who's on this coaching staff? Like, how the heck did they know me? Didn't know none of them. He didn't know me either. He has to probably tell you the story about how he found me or whatever. I don't know, but he got me in for an interview, and man, I put everything I could in that interview. Man. I was like, there's no way I'm not leaving with this job. Like, I need this job. Where I got daughter, I got to get this job.
Yeah.
And so they ended up hiring me, man, and that was huge, man. That, like, I don't know too many schools that give opportunities like that, and reach out to guys and just give opportunity. I didn't know anybody. We had no connection. My head, Coach Colapri didn't know any of those guys. Coach Mack didn't know any of those guys. There was no connection at all. I don't know what he saw or whatever, but he saw something in me, which is important to me. Is guys that see something in me, I'm going to give that effort back. And so Coach Rebels, the DC that's there now, and Coach Keys, who's now at Ohio State, they really, 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 took me in and groomed me there. Like, that's where I really got a lot of my grooming at. Working side by side with those guys. And the offensive line coach, who's the head coach there now, Coach Allen, man, he was huge because when I first got in there, he basically was running the show. The O-line was good. The D-line wasn't very good. It was subpar. And they would kick our butts every day in practice. That made me get better. And he would always say, iron sharpen iron, iron sharpen iron. My best experience there is the one day in practice when I finally, we going at each other. And it was more giving. We started dominating a little bit. And he got mad. And I was like, finally, we're doing something right. Because if he's mad, we're doing something right.
Yeah.
But he'll get on me about that one. But yeah, that experience was amazing. And Coach Red taking me in and teaching me football. Coach Macrino's I asked tons of questions, and they never got annoyed with me. You know what I mean? They just answered the question. We could be in the middle of game planning, and I just sit there and ask a question like, why is this corner doing this, or why is this safety doing this? They wouldn't answer it. They never was like, man, can you shut up and focus on what we need to focus on or something? It was never like that. And so I think they allowed me to grow in the way that I needed to, and allowed me to make mistakes, and allowed me. And there were times where it was tough, where Coach Macrinos or Coach Rebels would pull me in, and be like, hey man, we need you to do this. And they taught me. They didn't come at me in a demeaning way, but they pulled me aside and said, hey man, you got all this potential. This is what you can do. And that was important to me because not many people have done that for me or told me that. Told me what they tell you what you need. They tell you what you want to hear, but they told me what I needed to hear and told me what I needed to learn and told me what I needed to do to be successful in this field. And so that was huge, man. Going to Findlay, man, that place right there changed me. The way those guys work, everybody it was so competitive. Like, I see him work, I can't let him outwork me. Like, that's how it was. It wasn't as far as putting outworking hours wise. It was like, I'm not going to let his players play better than mine. Right. And that's why we were so good, because we were so competitive, and the players were all competitive with themselves. And so that move right there, man, that move right there was so huge for my coaching development. And that's how I ended up getting the co-DC title because they trusted me and they seen the growth that I had. But they were putting all that in me, man. I was just hoping to give it back to them, recruiting and all those things, man. It was huge, man. Some of those roles I got were big time.
Well, let me call a timeout real quick, man. I have to say this to you because I've done almost 300 of these, if not 300 of these podcasts, man. And you know, every one there's something you can really admire about somebody you're talking to, you know, and what just typically I don't say it's after the podcast, but I just want to say I appreciate your vulnerability. Right now, just kind of being open, talking about I was the worst D-line coach in America. I mean, this is such an egotistical business, you know, where a lot of guys probably were, if not, you know, their first 2 years. I mean, most people are the worst in the world because you got so much to learn, but most people won't say that, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that because, like you said, this is going to make a difference for some young coaches out there because they're going to learn from your experiences and then just saying that part right there where, yeah, you got pulled in by the head coach or the DC and they say, hey, man, come on, you got to do better. Once again, most people aren't going to admit to those type of things, but that's where we grow. You know, that's where we get better at. That's when we have those honest conversations and, you know, that's when it really happens, you know what I mean? And some of us will be fortunate enough to never have those type of conversations, but I mean, it's putting you in a fantastic position as regardless of those conversations, they promoted you, right? Because you responded, man. So anyways, I had to call a time out and say that to you
I appreciate
in front of the listeners, man, because that's hard to do, man. That's hard. We've all had our bad days, man. I don't know if I've ever talked about some of my bad days on the podcast, but you know, it's just a part of the deal, man. And like you said, that's where you grow. So you know, one of the things I did want to hit was you actually kind of created or you pried your way into this diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, especially as that laid over that 2020, 2021 time frame where there was a lot of, you know, racial tension just across the country. Just talk to us a little bit about that whole situation and why it was important to you and why it's important to talk about this.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm glad you hit on this. This is probably one of the most important things I've ever did in my life. I think that stood out besides having my daughter. I think this was one of the important roles that I took. So I was at Findlay. I had schools hitting that were hitting me up, wanted me to go, you know, other places. But like I said, I enjoyed Findlay, so I really didn't want to go. I didn't feel like I was time yet, and we didn't win the conference championship. That was the biggest thing for me. Like I want to win here before I leave somewhere else. That was my biggest nugget. And so because those players deserve it, they work their butt off. So my thing was, how can I in this situation that I am, let the school know how, you know, important of a person I am in the college. Like, I know they think I'm important, but how can I put myself out there and make sure I can help the school in any way and add value to the University of Findlay? Because you know, as I know, schools are businesses. So whoever adds more value is going to be able to make more money or be able to move and promote. So I came up, me and the head coach, I was like, I don't know. I'm thinking about taking this job and stuff like that. Had a couple good interviews with a couple of schools. And so I went back to him. I was like, Coach, man, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, do you think they could create a DNI or like of athletics and work hand in hand? Because we had a DNI part that's just regular students, but it wasn't athletics. And you as an athlete, you're not going on campus and going to go see them. But if you have somebody in athletics that know how you think and know how know the ins and outs, practice schedule, all these things you go through daily, it's easier. And so I put up an idea. I was like, hey, so what do you think about pitching an idea to the AD, Brandon Larita at the time? And what do you think about that? You know what I mean? Of me being DNI of athletics. Like and he's like, well, what I need you to do is go back and tell me exactly what that means. What is your day-to-day? What are you going to be like? What does that mean? I don't know what that looks like. You know what I mean? And so I went down, I went to a couple, I was shocked actually. I went to a couple websites and there were actually people in DNI of athletics, like Oregon had one, I think UCLA had one. Pac-12 is really good at it. And so I went in there and I just started reading kind of what they did in details. Okay. Because I knew what I had in mind, what I wanted to do, but I didn't know if they were, I just wanted to make sure we was on the same page. And so I met with the AD. He got me a meeting with the AD, which is always huge. And I pitched, I said, this is what I want to do. I want to do this, that, and the other. And I said, what do you think about that? I said, I think it's important for us to have somebody that, of color that can help athletes if they find a safe space. If it's not there, they can come to me and be able to talk to me. So that was the number one thing I wanted to make sure I had. If any athlete Asian, Black, didn't matter. Hispanic wanted to come in and talk and just sit there and talk. We could just talk. I didn't care. I wanted my door to be open. And that was very hard with the limited time I had, but I didn't care. I was able to figure out a way to do it. And then the next thing is becoming more diverse on campus. I didn't think we had enough diversity on campus as far as like some of the events and some of the things. And I told her I didn't want it to be a Black, the February thing, the Black History Month thing. That was my biggest thing. I was like, it has to be a continuation of something, of all heritages all year long. And so that was another thing that I pushed for. And then so that was kind of my idea is being able to have the biggest, one of the first steps I took is my big push was a barbershop on campus. I said, one of the things that is important, I know for me, because I went to Wayne State. If you ever been in Nebraska, ain't much ethnicity out in the middle of Wayne, Nebraska. I'm telling you that right now. Yeah. But we had a lot of Black players and Black students on campus, but we didn't have nowhere to get our hair done at all. And I said that was a big deal to me. And so my first initiative was to start a barbershop on campus and having barbers come in and cut the guys' hair. So they would come in 2 times a month and cut the hair for free. I said, I want us to pay for it. I said, I don't want to spend $1. I said, they already pay enough and everything else. I want them to spend $1. So it was crazy, man. The first time we done it, people didn't know what to expect. And it just grew and grew. Everybody's calling, hey, when you go bring in the barbershop, when you go get a barber back. We bought like I said, the AD was so amazing. She got barber chairs. We found a place. The first place wasn't kind of the place we wanted, but hey, she's like, hey, whatever we got to do to try to figure it out, we'll figure it out. And so it moved once, but like once we moved into where we really wanted that, it was amazing, man. And she was such a big help in pushing that because, you know, as an AD, she just can't go in and just do it. She has to ask the people that's the president and all that stuff, has to approve all that stuff. So she was behind me on this. And so that was like the first initiative. They made a big deal about it. It was huge. It wasn't as far as huge for me. It was important because of the players, man. The players and the recruitment, the attention that it brought recruitment-wise, because now we can get players. We might get a couple more players that we couldn't get before, no matter if it was soccer, no matter if it was whatever. You know what I mean? Everybody got their haircut. It wasn't just Black guys getting their haircut. You know, we had everybody, all different type of backgrounds getting their haircut. And so that was an important thing to me. The next step was getting the one. I was pushing right before I left. I was pushing to get one more seat of a salon chair. So if Black women of color can get their hair done, they get dreads or whatever, they can get their hair done too. That was the next step in that barbershop process that we were working on before I left. Other things is like food initiatives, just having more cultural food in the cafeteria. Stuff like that is important. Other initiatives we do, we try to tackle the LGBT community. We try to do that. We talk about Pride Day on campus. There were so many things we were hitting, but it was from an athlete. And anytime I did any interview, this is the most important thing that I wanted. And anytime we did interviews or did say for instance, we're doing something for sports, the biggest thing I told him, I was like, we got to make sure that we have each background doing this. I just don't want just a Caucasian athlete or African American athlete. I want all of them. I want Asian. I want LGBT community. I want all of them. And when we're doing this, I want them all in this thing because I think they all deserve a fair shot in having their voice heard and having their thing. And we did this one powerful video. You can find it online. And it was so powerful, man. We did one for Black History Month. We had our Black athletes talk about what does Black history mean to them and what does being Black mean to them. That was huge. It was powerful, man. It was one of my favorite things I've ever did. And then we had another one we did right before I left. And we had sat down different people and they kind of like quick interview, kind of like we're doing now, but it was like quick interview type questions. And then we were going to do a town hall where we had everybody there and just talk, man, and just have all these people with different backgrounds just talk. So those are all different type of things that I was very passionate about that role at Findlay. I was thankful that they allowed me to do that. And they allowed me a bonus on top of that for doing that in my time. So they paid me for that, which was a way to keep me around. They were able to divvy that up. But the point of it was just trying to get guys and have conversations so we can be able to find a better understanding of each other because the world is tough, man. So, and a lot of people don't understand where other people coming from or it might miss. You know, I might say something to you and you might understand it, but I might say something the same thing to the next man and he doesn't get it, right? So that was the biggest thing in that, just trying to start dialogue and having things for people that and having things for people to have avenues to be able to reach me or anybody else, or if I can help them get to anybody else they needed to talk to. But it was an amazing turnout, a lot of the stuff that we did there. Hopefully they continue to do it. I don't know if they continue to do it now, but it was something very, very important to me. And it's something I would love to do in the future because I had such an amazing time with those things.
Yeah, man. Well, that's amazing. You know, once again, just the ability to sit down and talk to so many coaches and It's a handful of coaches that I remember doing podcasts with where they are so passionate about something that ends up being outside of the X and O, category, but something that they created and that they done. And that's just awesome that you're able to kind of be a part of that conversation. Now, it's almost time for us to kind of end the podcast here, but I do want to throw this part in here. You mentioned, you really wanted that FBS opportunity, that Division I opportunity, but you had to make the tough decision of, hey man, do I bet on myself for a whole nother semester to graduate, or do I take this Division II opportunity here at Wayne State? And man, I tell you what, one of the most special things I think about that lower level coaching, when it's not that FBS, like the reality of it is if you went to LSU, most likely they're not going to call you in line for you to come take over the defensive line because they're going to have about 4 guys coaching the D line already, and won't be a student assistant, and at Findlay, just being able to go out there and ask questions and learn and grow, at Nebraska, most likely they're not going to let you learn and grow as an active coach.
No.
They're going to get you out of here. No. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. And just so many of those things that you get to learn, you get to grow, you get to get promoted. You get to start a program. You know what I mean? They're fighting to keep you there because you're bringing so much value, man. And I just think oftentimes we get so caught up in that logo, and we get so caught up in sometimes even a paycheck, but the experience, especially as a young coach, that you were able to garner from these places, man, it just, you can't find it anywhere else. You know what I mean? So I wanted to definitely talk about that. Now you're coaching at the Division I FCS level, and I know you probably have some tremendous experiences there, but that probably doesn't happen without those great experiences that you had, with those lower levels,
no doubt,
and growing. So just real quick, we talked about everything but Robert Morris. Just how the experience is going so far, how you've been able to tie in some of those experiences you've had thus far at those other universities and colleges to help you be a good coach there at Robert Morris.
Yeah, so leading from, like you said, I decided to go to Wayne State. Coach Brown was our DC. He was our D-line coach. He was the big key. He's probably the biggest key in anything I've done. I lost my dad when I was 14 in high school, and he was probably the next guy that was a father figure to me that I really honed in on to. And we had a lot of battles as far as he knew how to get me going. He would be in the middle of the game. He knew what to say to me to get me mad, to get me going. He knew those things, and he really, really, really helped me out. Definitely now in the coaching sense. Anytime I need to talk to him or whatever, he would answer the phone. He the one who had me over, and we had dinners, and he would invite me over. He knew I was hungry. He would have dinners. He would cook dinner for me. Well, his wife was. His wife is an amazing volleyball player from Nebraska. But I didn't want to leave him out because he was very, very important to me as a coach. But now being at RMU and kind of going through all that here, the crazy part about RMU is that having all those experiences and coming here is really not that far off to some of those other schools, because we're still fighting some of the things that we're fighting because it's not at FBS level, so we don't have the type of money that those other big schools have.
Absolutely.
We're kind of caught in the middle, so it's really similar. And so I think what's helped me out is being able to grind and having the disadvantage at some of these other schools, that we do have disadvantages versus other. We might have more advantages than D2 schools, but we don't have the advantage over FCS schools with some of the stuff that we have here. But I think our head coach does a great job of letting us understand that. Before I did the job, he told me, he's like, hey, D, I want you here, but I'm telling you, this is what it is. You know what I mean? Before you take this job, this is exactly what it is. I don't want you coming in here thinking it's something different and it's not. And that was the most important thing to me, is like, I had to take a step back and go, okay, I know this is Division I, and I'm excited for this opportunity he's given me. But let me just be a fly on the wall and figure things out first instead of just jumping right into it. So I can because he warned me about that. It's like, it's not going to be, James Madison or something like that when it comes to FCS at that time, right? He said, you're going to have to work your butt off, and we got to do things a little bit differently because we're not the biggest show in town, which we're not, but we do a lot of great things what we had. And I think once you understand that, it makes it a lot easier, because now when you go out recruiting, you're looking for that certain type of player. As you know, as I know, certain players to fit where you're at.
Absolutely.
You just can't go get anybody.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so if they don't fit and they're not, and you let them know, like, hey, this place is not the same as, you might go to some other FCS, it might be a little bit nicer, it might be a little bit this and that. This is what we have, and this is what it is.
Yeah.
And if you want to work your butt off, we'll be just fine. I think that was a message this year. I think we kind of struggled with that last year, with kind of how our record was, and struggled with understanding kind of who we were in that moment. And I think our head coach got back to that. Coach Clark got back to, hey, this is what we are. This is what we're hard nosed. We go work our butt off. We got to outwork people. We're not gonna be bigger than everybody, but we go outwork everybody. And the culture and everything that he's been preaching has really been on point this offseason. I think the players are really taking heed to that and learning. Coach Fungus has been big. He challenges me all the time, whether I like it or not. You know what I mean? He challenges me all the time. And it's kind of nice now having Coach McCrenos, who hired me at Findlay. He's actually on staff now too. So it makes it nice to have a guy like that next to me, because I can always lean on him to anything I need. I can always lean on him. And then we have great guys on offense and defense on the staff that has helped me out a little bit. But all those things you said that I had to go through, and now I'm here, it makes it a lot easier when you come to a place like this, because now, okay, I already been through all this. If something happens, I already been through this. So this is how I know how to attack this. You know what I mean? Right. And so that was the biggest thing for me. And I appreciate you asking that question, because it's definitely the experiences you go through definitely mold you into how you are now. Our head coach always says this. He's like, how do I know? He said, I know what to do. The only way I know is because of what the other coaches I've coached with or I've seen. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you ain't seen it, how you know how to do it that way? But because you've never been there. You might hear it from somebody, but your experiences as you go through is what molds you to be the head coach you are, or be the D-line coach that I am. And those experiences are all different. And he said something, when you learn something, when you learn something that you've been doing for so long, you got to unlearn it. And then you got to relearn again something new to reprogram yourself. So he's always trying to reprogram himself, and that sticks with me. Is some of the stuff that we're doing now. I kind of have to reprogram myself to be able to adapt to what we know we have now, and we know what we got to do, and we know what the mission is. So all those experiences definitely molded me, and I appreciate all of them, whether it was hard or not. You know what I mean? It makes it a lot easier in the future, because I already know what to expect. So a lot of things that happen now, it's like, oh, I know how to handle this now. Like, everybody like, how do you know how to handle this? Like, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? But before, I was probably like losing my hair. Like, what the heck is going on? That's right. And so, yeah, the experience has definitely molded you, and all the things that I went through to get to this point, man. It was definitely worth it. And I look forward to the season coming up, man, because our team is hungry, man. And the D-line is out there right now working their butt off every morning. Don't even have to be here, but they sitting here working out their butt off, finding a way to get here every morning, paying their own way, trying to do what they got to do to be able to be the best version of themselves. That's why I always preach being the best version of yourself, us in the D-line dog room. So that's the biggest thing, is I'm looking forward to what's next, and that's the exciting part of RMU.
I love it, man. Well, hey, that's a good point for us to stop. Definitely have to get you on here in the next couple of years, man, revisit, see how everything is going with you. But until then, man, best of luck throughout the course of the summer and the fall, and look forward to seeing you in Nashville in 2024, okay?
No doubt, man. Look forward to seeing you. I appreciate everything you do, man. Love the podcast, man. Keep it going.
And you know what? I'm sorry, I forgot to let you plug your social media accounts. So in case anybody has any questions, want to connect, catch up with you, drop your Twitter account for me real quick before we get
so it's THE Darius Davis, DARIUS DAVIS. Very simple. All right, hit me up on there. If you have any questions, anything like that, man. I'm always an open book. Me and my guys started a D-line dog kind of chat room. So we have that on one of the group me app things. So we have a lot of D-linemen in there. So if you want to connect about D-line play, anything, defensive wise, schemes, whatever it is, man, just give me a shout. And I appreciate you guys for taking the time to listen.
Yeah, no doubt, Coach. Thanks again. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Inside the Headset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter at Coach Mario Price, and remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.